Grail watches on this episode of Adventures with Time. Welcome to Adventures with Time. I'm your host, Bob. And if you're new to this channel, this is where I talk about my experiences with watches and collecting watches. If that interests you, please hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you'll be alerted to whenever I upload a new video. And if you like pictures of watches, follow me on Instagram. After publishing a few weeks ago my State of the Collection 2009 video, I started thinking about potential watches for 2020. And if you've watched any of the videos where I discuss my watch collecting habits, I have considered my watch collection to have two different segments: affordable watches and more expensive luxury watches. Naturally, when I consider what watches I might obtain in the next year, I tend to think about them in these two categories separately. What I'd like to share with you in this video is what I consider those Grail watches which are attainable by me in 2020. Now, does that really make sense? I've seen other watch YouTubers share similar goals, and often they talk about Grail watches as the pinnacle of watches that they would want to have in their collection. And I've looked around on the internet and magazines at what people consider Grail watches. And the common theme I seem to be seeing is a watch that is relatively hard to obtain, but one that is also so desired that it would never leave the collection of the owner. But for me, I think I'm a ways off from thinking about that ultimate watch that I would want. For example, a true Grail watch for me, one that would be at the pinnacle of my collection, might be a Patek Philippe. If you've watched any of my videos about the Tiffany branded Patek Philippe watch passed down to me from my great uncle, you'll understand why a Patek Philippe watch is something I'd really like to get, up and above the fact that they are one of the holy trinity of watches. What I'd like to talk about on this video is more in line with what I've heard some other watch YouTubers refer to as attainable grails. That is, watches highly desired by me that I would ultimately like to have in my collection, which I think I could get in this next year. So I'd like to share my current thoughts and get any feedback you have or are willing to share. But remember that I'm relatively new, having been collecting watches for just about 2 years now. So some of my picks may not seem like Grail watches to you, but these are watches that I would really like to have in my collection in the near term, say the next year, maybe year and a half. Although I'm not ready to go out and make a purchase tomorrow, these are the watches that I'm really considering and that I'd like to investigate over the next few months with the eye of picking one of them up for this year. So let's dive in and take a look at my Grail watches for 2020. The first of my Grail watches for 2020 is the Omega Speedmaster. I had considered this watch line during my search for my first mid-tier luxury watch, but had selected the Tudor Black Bay 58 as I felt it was appropriate for a wider set of wearing situations. But the Speedmaster, and specifically the Moonwatch, is something I want to have in my collection. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and as most kids, was captivated by the U.S. space program. I stayed up late the night of the first moon landing to watch it live. I actually took a picture off the television and have it to this day. So having a Moonwatch is something I crave. But which one? There are many varieties. Some longtime favorites, some limited edition, and some new ones. After looking over many of the Speedies at my local Omega boutique, there are really three which appeal to me. The Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch, chronograph 42mm. As you all know, this watch comes in either a Hesalite crystal and a solid case back, or with a sapphire crystal and display back. Of the two, I would go with the sapphire model. Reference 311.30.42.30.01.006, with a retail list price on a bracelet for $6,350. Another Speedy I really like is the moon phase chronometer at 44.25 mm. This is reference 304.30.44.52.01.001 with a list price of $10,700 on a bracelet. Although slightly larger than the standard Speedy Professional Moonwatch, this model has a somewhat similar look. However, instead of the 3 subdials, the moon phase has 2 subdials and a moon phase complication at the 6 o'clock position. The 2 subdials each serve dual purpose. At the 9 o'clock position, it supports the running seconds and has a date indicator. At the 6 o'clock position is the chronometer minute and hour indicator. So each of these subdials have 2 hands each. The cool thing I found out about this moon phase watch is that the moon itself is cut from mother of pearl, and there's actually a footprint on the surface of the moon. It takes strong magnification to see it, but it's there. Obviously not in proportion to the moon. The third watch under consideration is the Speedy Moonwatch Gray Side of the Moon. Reference number 311.93.44.51.99.001. This watch lists for $12,000. The case is totally constructed from ceramic, also with a diameter of 44.25 mm, and sits on a leather strap. The most impressive thing to me about this watch is how they obtained a polished bevel on the case. This watch provides a running second-hand subdial at the 9 o'clock position and the chronometer, minute, and hour indicators at the 3 o'clock position. The dial on this watch has a sandblasted platinum finish, reminiscent of the dusty surface of the moon. If you're a follower of Speedy watches, or Omega in general, you know that they just announced the Moonwatch Caliber 321. I did ask about this at the Omega boutique. It was informed that they should be arriving starting in February, but he warned me that they expect this watch to be produced in quantities of about 1,000 per year, with only 100 of those allocated to the U.S. Therefore, only VIP clients are expected to be able to get their hands on this model. So which of these 4 models would I select? Well, we can immediately eliminate the Caliber 321, as there's no way I would be allowed to get one. The Gray Side of the Moon is a really interesting watch, but at $12,000, my interest starts to wane a bit. The moon phase is really a cool watch. It's got a lot of complications on it, but I'm just not sure that I'm ready to spend over $10,000 for it. I think the one for me is the Moonwatch Professional with the sapphire crystal. Another watch brand I was considering for my first mid-tier luxury watch is Rolex. I had tried on several Rolex models: the Oyster Perpetual, the GMT Master, Daytona, Submariner, but it was the Explorer II I found most interesting and appealing. Consequently, I was struck with a dilemma: which model I liked better? The older, discontinued 5-digit reference 16570, or the current 6-digit reference 216570. I was able to see and try on wrist several of the older models. However, even after visiting several ADs, both locally and in New York City, I could not find one of the new Explorer IIs to try on. Now, there are some clear differences between these two models, which necessitates an in-person inspection before I could make a decision. First, the size. 39 millimeters for the older model versus 42 for the newer. This size difference drives other aspects of these watches, most notably the size of the hour indices and hands, and the aesthetics of the dial, the larger one having a more spacious appearance. Additionally, drilled lugs are available on some of the older models, but not on the new current model. Finally, there is price. An older model for which you are virtually forced to buy pre-owned could cost you $6,700 and up, depending on condition. Whereas with the new model, one can buy a pristine watch for $8,350 list price based on the new Rolex 2020 MSRP. Of course, premiums may apply even if one can find one to purchase. If I were to select the current 6-digit reference model, I would probably buy a new one, as I would get the pleasure of applying my own scratches to the watch. And I think between the two color dials, black and white, I would select white. First, I think the contrast with the black hands makes time more readable. And I think the white dial provides a sportier look to the watch. I'll keep searching for one to try on so I can narrow down this Grail option to a specific model. Next is a watch brand I've been following since I started collecting. It's the JS Watch Company out of Reykjavik, Iceland. A small watch company that produces about 500 watches per year under the leadership of master watchmaker Gilbert O. Guthjonsson. I hope I pronounced that correctly. In fact, on the door of their workshop is printed, probably the world's smallest watch manufacturer. It is here where they hand assemble their mostly Icelandic-themed watches. I'm intrigued by the idea of owning a watch designed and built by a small team in Iceland. Yes, there are other small watch manufacturers around the world, but I find the watches from this shop with their local inspirations to be something I want to investigate. So I hope to make it over to Iceland to tour this amazing island nation and pay a visit to the JS Watch Company and review their models and hopefully find a watch to purchase. Their current collection consists of about 15 models, each with several color options available. They've also had previous models which are no longer available. From their collection, I find the Frisland Classic, a stunning dress watch. It's a 42mm case made from polished 316L stainless steel with a thickness of 12 millimeters. An antique white dial shows off an uncluttered face with Roman numeral hour indices and a subdivided hour-minute track with Arabic numerals at each 5-minute interval. The only other printing on the dial is the watchmaker and model name, and down at the 6 o'clock position is the date window. The flame blue hands provide a nice contrast, making them easily readable. Capping off this dial is a sapphire crystal with AR coating on the inside. This watch sports a sapphire display back, which shows off the Soprod A10-2 movement. I had never heard of Soprod, so I did a little investigation and found out that Soprod is a Swiss company that produces these Seiko 4L25 base movements as alternatives and drop-in replacements for the ETA 2892 A2 movements. They were introduced in 2004 and have since been rebranded as the Soprod M100 in 2016. They operate at 28,800 beats per hour, include 25 joules, and comes with a 42-hour power reserve. The construction of this watch affords a 5-atmosphere rating and comes with several 20mm wide strap options. The brown ostrich is my favorite. Frisland was a large mythical island that appeared on maps in the 14th and 15th centuries, supposedly located in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean just south of Iceland. But as I've read, this turned out to be a hoax. So a JS watch is definitely on my 2020 Grail list. But whether or not I make it over to Iceland and the Frisland Classic is the one for me remains a question. As I said when I opened up this video, you may not consider some of these or any of them Grail watches, as they are readily available. But these are the higher end watches that I would like to add to my collection, and hopefully one of them this year. And if I do, I don't think I'd ever sell it. And that's why I consider them a Grail watch. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, especially about some of those watches that I really need to do some more investigation on. What do you think of them? And as always, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for my next video.